There are secrets that governments will never tell you, missions that don't exist, heroes whose names you'll never know. This is one of those stories. March 23, 2019, Istanbul, Turkey. An intelligence operative named David Brennan sat in a crowded cafe, watching a man across the street. The man was carrying a briefcase. Inside that briefcase were the names of every undercover American operative in the Middle East. 17 names, 17 lives. If that briefcase reached its destination, all of them would be dead within 72 hours. David had exactly 19 minutes to stop it. David Brennan wasn't supposed to be in Istanbul that day. He was 41 years old, a 15-year veteran of the agency, and he'd actually submitted his resignation 2 weeks earlier. His daughter Emily was getting married in June. His wife Rachel had given him an ultimatum: the job or the family. For the first time in his career, David had chosen family. But then the call came. 3 a.m., his encrypted phone buzzing on the nightstand. His handler's voice was tense. "We have a situation. You're the only asset within range. I know you're out, but we need you one more time." Isn't that always how it goes? One more time. The target was a Russian intelligence officer named Dmitry Volkov, former Spetsnaz, current SVR. He'd turned one of our analysts at headquarters, someone with access to the crown jewels, our entire network in the region. 23 years of carefully built covers, gone, burned. David had arrived in Istanbul 14 hours ago. No backup, no surveillance team. Just him, a Glock 19 with 2 spare magazines, and a city of 15 million people where everyone could be an enemy. He'd tracked Volkov to this cafe in the Beyoğlu district. The meet was happening in plain sight. Volkov would pass the briefcase to a courier. The courier would take it to the airport. By midnight, that intel would be in Moscow. And by morning, 17 Americans would start dying. David checked his watch, 10:43 a.m. The courier was late. Then he saw her. A woman in a red coat, walking quickly through the crowd. She sat down across from Volkov. They didn't speak. Volkov slid the briefcase under the table. The woman stood up, briefcase in hand, and started walking toward the metro station. David had a choice to make. In the field, you always have a choice, but you never have enough time to make it. He could call it in, wait for backup, follow protocol, but by the time backup arrived, she'd be gone. 17 people would die. Or he could go now, alone, breaking every rule in the book. David dropped 20 lira on his table and followed her. The Istanbul metro at rush hour is chaos. Shoulder to shoulder humanity. The woman in the red coat moved fast, weaving through the crowd. David stayed 3 people back, close enough to track her, far enough to stay invisible. She went down the escalator to the M2 line. David followed. The platform was packed. A train was pulling in. She moved toward the doors. That's when David saw him. A second man, watching the woman, watching David. Russian. Had to be. Volkov had sent a shadow. This wasn't just a pickup, it was a trap. They knew someone would follow. They were ready. The train doors opened. The woman stepped inside. The second man was right behind her, his hand inside his jacket. David had maybe 3 seconds to decide. If he got on that train, he was walking into an ambush. If he didn't, 17 Americans died. David got on the train. The doors closed. The train lurched forward into the tunnel. The woman was 10 feet away, holding the briefcase. The second man was between them, his hand still inside his jacket, eyes locked on David. In the reflection of the train window, David saw a third man behind him. They hadn't sent one shadow, they'd sent 2. David was trapped in a subway car, underground, no backup, no exit, no good options. The train was approaching the next station, Taksim Square, 20 seconds out. David's mind was racing. Take them here? Too many civilians. Wait for a better opportunity? There wasn't one. The woman would be off this train in 3 stops, into a car, and gone forever. 15 seconds. The second man's hand moved inside his jacket. David saw the outline of a pistol grip. 10 seconds. David's own hand moved to his waistband where his Glock was concealed under his jacket. 5 seconds. The train began to slow. That's when David did something that wasn't in any training manual. He didn't draw his weapon. He didn't move toward the woman. He did the last thing anyone expected. He pulled the emergency brake. The train screeched, metal screaming against metal. Everyone in the car lurched forward. The woman dropped the briefcase. It hit the floor and skidded. The second man stumbled, his gun hand flying out to catch himself. David moved. 3 steps. He kicked the briefcase toward the doors just as they opened. The case slid out onto the platform. David dove after it, rolled, came up with the briefcase in his left hand and his Glock in his right. The second man was out of the train, weapon drawn. Screams erupted on the platform, civilians running. David fired twice, center mass. The man went down. The third man was right behind him. David spun. Two more shots. The man dropped. Alarms were blaring. Turkish police would be here in 90 seconds. David ran, up the stairs, through the turnstiles, out onto Istiklal Avenue. His phone was buzzing. His handler. David answered while running. Package secured, compromised, exfil now. Park Hotel. Rooftop, 8 minutes. David ran through the crowded street. Behind him, sirens. Ahead, the hotel, 6 blocks. He had the briefcase. Inside were 17 death warrants, 17 families who would get visits from men in dark suits, telling them their loved ones weren't coming home. Not today, not on his watch. David made it to the hotel. Up the service stairs, to the rooftop. A Black Hawk helicopter was already circling. It touched down. David threw the briefcase inside and climbed in. 30 seconds later, they were airborne, flying toward the Mediterranean where a Navy destroyer was waiting. David opened the briefcase. Inside were files, photos, names, addresses, everything Moscow needed to dismantle our entire network. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline wearing off, from realizing how close it had been. His handler sat across from him, opening each file. "All here," he said. "You got them all. 17 lives saved today because of you." David didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired. He felt old. He felt like he wanted to go home. 3 days later, David was back in Virginia. Rachel met him at the door. She didn't ask where he'd been. She never did. That was the deal. He saw the question in her eyes, though. Was this really the last time? David looked at his daughter's wedding invitation on the refrigerator. June 14th. 10 weeks away. "I'm done," he said. "For real this time. I'm out." Rachel nodded. She'd heard that before. But this time, something in his eyes was different. This time, he meant it. What Rachel didn't know, what David couldn't tell her, was what happened in Istanbul. Not the gunfight, not the chase, but the moment on that train when he realized something. There would always be another briefcase, another mission, another crisis that only he could solve. The world would never stop needing people like him. But his daughter would only get married once. His wife would only give him so many chances. His life would only happen once. 17 people were alive because David got on that train. But David was only alive because he decided to get off. 6 weeks later, on June 14th, David Brennan walked his daughter down the aisle. As he watched her smile, as he shook hands with her new husband, as he danced with his wife under the stars, he thought about that briefcase, about those 17 names, about the choice he'd made. In the intelligence community, there's a saying, the mission is everything. The mission comes first, always. But David learned something that day in Istanbul. The mission is never everything, because if you give everything to the mission, there's nothing left for the people you're actually protecting. Here's what they don't tell you about heroes. They're not the people who never stop fighting. They're the people who know when to stop. They're the people who understand that saving the world doesn't mean anything if you lose yourself in the process. David Brennan saved 17 lives in Istanbul, but he saved his own life by walking away. The agency never acknowledged the Istanbul operation. It doesn't exist in any official record. The 17 operatives whose lives were saved never knew how close they came to being burned. They're still out there, still doing their jobs, still protecting a country that will never know their names. And David? He's retired now. He coaches Little League on Saturdays. He takes his wife to dinner on Fridays. He's learning to play golf, though he's terrible at it. He's living the quiet life he thought he never wanted. But some nights, when he can't sleep, he thinks about that moment on the train. 3 seconds to decide. Draw the weapon or pull the brake. Follow the rules or break them. Live the life you have or chase the life you think you should have. Between breaths. That's where every choice is made. In that tiny space where you decide who you are and what matters. David Brennan took 17,000 breaths during his 15 years in intelligence. But the breath that mattered most was the one he took when he decided it was time to come home. Some missions you complete. Some missions complete you. The trick is knowing the difference. David knows now. And every morning, when he wakes up next to his wife, when he hears his daughter's voice on the phone, when he lives his quiet, ordinary, beautiful life, he remembers. He got out. He made it home. Not everyone does.